All right, folks, welcome back to the New Sentinel. Today's topic has got the media, and just about everyone else, in a real frenzy. The FBI raid on John Bolton, the former National Security Advisor. Now, if you've tuned in lately, you know we talked about raids and show-of-force policing in our last few episodes. But this is a whole different storm entirely. Let's lay out what happened, then dig into how it got spun so wildly. August 22nd, Bolton's home in Bethesda and his D.C. office raided by the FBI. Court warrant, Espionage Act tossed in. Cameras everywhere. No arrest though, and as of a couple days later, still no formal charges.
Yeah, and here's the kicker, right? Kash Patel, who's heading the bureau now, he's a Trump guy. The legal side, it goes back. DOJ blocked Bolton's memoir a few years ago, and then just this year, Trump yanked his security clearance. So, was this about justice, or was it political payback? Feels like we're watching a chess match with 5 hands on each side.
Ethan, I think you touched on why this is setting off alarm bells. If I look at the coverage from what you'd call the anti-MAGA side, it is all about dangerous politicization. Kash Patel authorizes the raid. Suddenly, FBI raids on political critics become a tool of intimidation. You listen to George Conway, he's calling the whole thing an abuse of power, warning about creeping authoritarianism. There's a real comparison to what's happened in countries with fewer checks and balances. And honestly, it's scary how easily the justice system gets weaponized when these lines blur.
Yeah, but hang tight, Olga. Look, MAGA folks are saying the exact opposite. They see Bolton. He's always been a neocon snake to a lot of folks on the right. So for them, this is almost karma, or at least leveling the field. To them, the media's blowing up raid footage, showing dramatic shots, talking heads implying guilt. They're saying, see, they raided Trump. Now they're raiding his enemies. All smoke and mirrors. Whole thing's rigged.
That's the crux, Duke. And you know, having seen a few real narrative battles back during my deployments, let me tell you a quick story. Years ago, I was in Nigeria as an observer for an election. The press coverage back home in the U.S. made it sound like utter chaos and violence, but the reality on the ground was complicated, not just one story. Same with what we're seeing here. Both sides frame it as their own movie, but the actual facts are a lot colder, a lot messier. And you know, sometimes what gets left out of the frame is more important than what's in it.
Chukwuka, I feel you there, man. One dude's law enforcement action is another dude's political purge. These media guys, especially the cable cats, they know exactly how to stir it up. I mean, let's be honest. None of us here are naive about how both left and right are playing this game, right?
Exactly, Ethan. Narratives now are almost more powerful than the facts themselves. Videos get clipped, headlines get written to inflame, and before you know it, no one trusts institutions. In Russia, I've seen firsthand how quickly a raid or trial becomes a spectacle, used to shut up critics. We don't want that here, but the lines grow thinner.
So, what's the move? If both sides say the other's weaponizing justice, who do you believe? And can anybody actually just look at the facts anymore without running it through a political filter? That's what bugs me most, honestly.
Well said, Duke. And I think this grown-up media literacy is something we should keep coming back to. Narratives are the battlefield now, maybe even more than when I was in uniform. Now, speaking of blurred lines between power and justice, there's the matter of Project 2025, and this big move to restructure the Department of Justice, straight out of Heritage Foundation's playbook. The plan, as I understand, is to let the White House steer DOJ decisions, with political hands overriding career prosecutors. Supposed to bring accountability, they say. But you've got critics screaming about the end of prosecutorial independence. Ethan, you've been on both sides, law and military. What's your read?
I'll keep it blunt. Rolling back these checks and balances, folks pretended that'd bring order, but it ends up stacking the deck for whoever's in charge. One administration's hero is another's tyrant. You remember Watergate? That whole post-scandal framework was about keeping politics out of prosecutions. You rip that up and you're just begging for trouble. Maybe not today, But next time someone with fewer scruples comes along, it's like chess. If you toss out half the rules, the game ain't worth playing.
That's right, Ethan. Control of law means control of the people. Wherever I report, Moscow or Minnesota, when you take away legal independence, you start locking journalists up for spreading false news. Project 2025's advocates say prosecutors are unelected bureaucrats, but the danger is political hit jobs dressed up as legal work. And let me shift to another law battle: no-fault divorce. Conservative states, Texas, my adopted home included, they're pushing to restrict it if you have kids. They claim it protects families, but I've interviewed women, many stuck in abusive marriages because proof is so hard to demonstrate for a judge. In Russia for years, the law made it nearly impossible to leave a bad marriage. Women were collateral damage. It's not history you want to see repeated here.
I'm going to weigh in on the divorce angle for a sec, if you don't mind, Olga. Streamlining divorce sounds neat, but getting rid of standards means some folks walk away too quick. Others get stuck fighting in court forever. Law's got to keep kids safe, sure, but if it pins people in bad situations, especially the vulnerable, it ain't working. Oh, and these reforms? They're going to jam the courts up even more than they already are. Everybody's got some story they heard, huh?
Yeah, and honestly, if you look at the data, these laws don't always have the chill the divorce impact they claim. They tend to push the issues underground. I get family stability, right? But when the law gets too heavy-handed, it opens up other risks. That's not just theory, it's what's played out in other countries. Olga, your perspective from Moscow, kind of chilling the way legal tweaks become tools to keep people stuck.
Spot on, Chukwuka. Law's always trying to balance order and liberty, a moving target, and Project 2025 represents swinging the pendulum hard. We've been talking about this loop since episode 5, right? Justice reforms, court backlogs, public trust. If the foundation cracks, everything built on top shakes too.
Building on that, democracy is not just elections. It's whether people can count on fair treatment from their government at every level. Once you lose that, you start worrying about which side owns the courts instead of whether justice is served. History says, once the law turns into a weapon, it's nearly impossible to pull it back.
And man, soon as everyone thinks the other team's rigging the system, you got chaos. Justice gets ripped up from both sides. Nobody trusts the results. Nobody trusts each other. Sounds dramatic, but we're already there in a lot of ways.
Let's spin off from justice into the broader cultural shakeup we're seeing, especially around gender, identity, and even existential threats like nuclear war. There's this new trend in masculinity podcasts. I mean, we all remember the red pill crowd, right? Very combative, very us versus them. Now, shows like The Reframe and Iron and Empathy, they're pivoting, talking a lot more about emotional intelligence, being good dads, owning your mess-ups. It's less alpha, more actual grown-up. Sign of the times, maybe.
Heh, I've heard some of those, Chuka. Back in the day, you brought up feelings in a barracks. You'd get laughed out the room, maybe worse. But lately, even in the vet community, guys are talking about this stuff. Still get pushback, sure. A lot of old schoolers gripe that it's all soft. But you know what? Some of these young guys, they're moving in a better direction. Less bark, more bite, if you catch my drift. Weirdest thing? Part of me likes it.
I see it on the reporting side too. It's a cultural realignment, not just about manhood, but about how we process fear, anger, how we face the big unknowns. And speaking of unknowns, nuclear anxiety is back in the conversation. The Atlantic's 80 years on the edge issue made me remember Soviet-era drills as a little girl. These days, talk of arms races and existential risk is everywhere. Do you think we've grown numb to it, or does the new storytelling make it more real?
Olga, I relate more than you know. Late 80s, I was a rookie soldier, stationed not too far from a site with those big signs, radiation, fallout, all of it. We ran drills for incoming nukes and, man, everyone just acted tough, but we all knew. If a siren went, we're toast. But I think the difference now, it's more psychological, yeah? The news, movies, they churn this fear up. Only now, instead of duck and cover, it's all, what if tomorrow ends? But we don't really talk about what we can do, just Watch the headlines roll.
Major, every generation finds a different boogeyman. Back in Nigeria, it was political violence for you nukes. For today's Gen Z, maybe climate collapse. I guess the scary part is the way the fear gets recycled, rebranded, but never really solved. Maybe these new forms of dialogue, whether podcasts or magazines, are trying to help us start working through the anxiety together, not just alone with our screens.
Yeah, fear sells, but sometimes talking's the only way to kill it. Or at least drag it out in daylight so it doesn't eat you in the dark.
That's why these conversations matter. Culture, law, fears, they all link back to how much we trust each other and our systems, or if we do at all. Stories shape everything, from what makes a good man to who we see as the enemy. More empathy, fewer scripts, please.
Agreed. Empathy. Even for people you don't agree with. Maybe that's where we start putting things back together bit by bit.
Perfect spot to pause for today. We covered a lot. Raids, justice, masculinity, even those old nuclear ghosts. Thanks for riding along, everyone. We'll be back next time to break down whatever's next on the horizon. Ethan, Olga, Duke, always a pleasure hearing your takes.
Wouldn't miss it. Thanks, team.
Thank you all, and take care of each other out there.
Stay sharp, folks. See y'all next time.